From the sun-drenched beaches of Miami to the quiet pine woods of Pensacola, Florida is the final resting place of some of the most influential figures in American culture, sports, music, and history. Today, we're walking through the most fascinating celebrity graves scattered across the Sunshine State, from rock and roll legends to football icons, from civil rights pioneers to literary giants. Write in the comments which of these resting places you'd visit first. Jackie Gleason, comedy legend and unforgettable star of The Honeymooners, died June 24, 1987, age 71, entombed at Our Lady of Mercy Cemetery in Doral, just outside Miami. His marble tomb famously bears the inscription, "And away we go," honoring his most iconic catchphrase. After spending the final years of his life in Florida, the larger-than-life entertainer chose the state as his final home, and his grave remains one of the most visited celebrity sites in all of South Florida. Don Shula, the legendary head coach of the Miami Dolphins and the winningest coach in NFL history, died May 4, 2020, aged 90, buried at Our Lady of Mercy Cemetery in Doral, the same hallowed ground that holds Jackie Gleason. The architect of the only perfect season in NFL history, Shula spent more than 5 decades shaping South Florida football. His grave has become a quiet pilgrimage site for football fans from across the country, drawn to honor the man who turned the Dolphins into one of the league's most respected franchises. Bob Ross, the soft-spoken painter and beloved host of The Joy of Painting, died July 4, 1995, aged 52. Buried at Woodlawn Memorial Park in Gotha, just outside Orlando. His modest grave marker draws devoted visitors who leave paintbrushes, palettes, and small canvases as tributes to the man who taught millions to see happy little trees. For years, his resting place remained relatively unknown, but as his cultural legacy grew, so did the steady stream of fans seeking out one of the most warmly remembered television personalities ever. Henry Flagler, the railroad and hotel magnate who single-handedly built modern Florida, died May 20, 1913, aged 83, entombed in Fide Memorial Presbyterian Church in St. Augustine, a magnificent Venetian Renaissance structure he himself commissioned in memory of his daughter. Flagler's tomb sits in a private mausoleum within the church, surrounded by stained glass and intricate stonework. As the visionary behind the Florida East Coast Railway and the founder of cities including Palm Beach and Miami, he rests in one of the most architecturally stunning final resting places in the entire state. Zora Neale Hurston, the trailblazing author of Their Eyes Were Watching God and one of the most important voices of the Harlem Renaissance, died January 28, 1960, age 69, buried at the Garden of the Heavenly Rest in Fort Pierce. For nearly 15 years, her grave lay unmarked until author Alice Walker traveled to Florida, located the spot, and placed the memorial stone honoring her as a genius of the South. Today, her resting place is one of the most meaningful literary pilgrimage sites in the entire country. Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings, Pulitzer Prize-winning author of The Yearling, died December 14, 1953, aged 57, buried at Antioch Cemetery in Island Grove, not far from her beloved Cross Creek home. Rawlings captured the soul of rural Florida in prose that remains unmatched, and her grave sits in a peaceful, tree-shaded country cemetery that feels lifted from the pages of her own books, a quiet but treasured pilgrimage site for readers and fans of classic American literature. George Steinbrenner, the boisterous longtime owner of the New York Yankees, died July 13, 2010, aged 80, buried at Trinity Memorial Gardens in Trinity, Florida. Though forever associated with the Bronx, Steinbrenner spent much of his life in the Tampa Bay area and chose to be laid to rest in his adopted home state. His towering memorial reflects the larger-than-life personality of one of the most powerful figures in modern baseball history, and his grave continues to draw visitors from across the sports world. Mary McLeod Bethune, the pioneering educator, civil rights leader, and presidential advisor, died May 18, 1955, aged 79. Buried on the grounds of Bethune-Cookman University in Daytona Beach, the historically black college she founded with little more than faith and determination. Her gravesite, located steps from the campus she built from the ground up, is one of the most meaningful tribute sites in American education and a deeply important destination for visitors honoring the legacy of one of the 20th century's most remarkable leaders. Ronnie Van Zant, the founding frontman and unmistakable voice of Lynyrd Skynyrd, died October 20th, 1977, aged 30 in the band's tragic plane crash. Originally interred at Jacksonville Memorial Gardens in Orange Park, his remains were later moved to a private location after vandalism in the 1990s. Van Zant remains one of the most beloved figures in Southern rock, and his memory still draws devoted fans to Jacksonville, the city that shaped him and the band that defined a generation. Allen Collins, Lynyrd Skynyrd guitarist and co-writer of Freebird, died January 23, 1990, aged 37, buried at Riverside Memorial Park in Jacksonville. One of the architects of the band's classic twin guitar sound, Collins survived the 1977 plane crash but lived with its physical and emotional scars until his death. His grave is one of the most visited rock and roll resting places in Florida, and a regular stop for fans making the Skynyrd pilgrimage through Jacksonville. Leon Wilkeson, longtime Lynyrd Skynyrd bassist known for his colorful hats and unmistakable stage presence, died July 27, 2001, aged 49, buried at Riverside Memorial Park in Jacksonville, near his bandmate Allen Collins. Wilkeson played on virtually every classic Skynyrd recording and was a central part of the band's enduring identity. His resting place has become a treasured stop for Southern rock fans visiting the city that gave the world one of America's most iconic bands. Bo Diddley, rock and roll pioneer whose signature beat shaped the sound of popular music for generations, died June 2, 2008, aged 79. Buried at Rosemary Hill Cemetery in Bronson, a small town in north-central Florida he called home for many years. Few figures in music history have been as foundational, yet his grave sits in a humble rural cemetery far from the spotlight, a quiet but powerful tribute site for anyone who understands how much of modern music begins with him. Jaco Pastorius, the legendary jazz fusion bass virtuoso whose innovations changed the instrument forever, died September 21, 1987, aged 35, buried at Queen of Heaven Cemetery in North Lauderdale. Pastorius grew up in South Florida and rose from local clubs to global recognition with Weather Report before his life ended tragically young. His grave is regarded as a sacred site by bass players and jazz musicians around the world who travel from across the globe to pay their respects. Mel Tillis, country music star, Grand Ole Opry member, and one of the genre's most successful songwriters, died November 19, 2017, aged 85. Buried at Florida National Cemetery in Bushnell. Though famously known for his career in Nashville, Tillis spent much of his life in Florida and ultimately chose to be laid to rest at one of the state's most distinguished veteran cemeteries. His grave is a respected stop for country music fans visiting Central Florida and a fitting resting place for a beloved voice from the genre's golden era. Rocky Marciano, the only undefeated heavyweight champion in boxing history, died August 31, 1969, aged 45, in a small plane crash the day before his 46th birthday. Buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Gardens in Fort Lauderdale. With a perfect record of 49-0, Marciano remains one of the most legendary figures the sport has ever produced. His grave in South Florida is a meaningful pilgrimage site for boxing fans, honoring one of the toughest champions of the 20th century. Harry T. Moore, the courageous civil rights pioneer who fought for voting rights and equal pay decades before the broader movement took shape, died December 25, 1951, aged 46, killed by a bomb planted beneath his home in Mims, Florida, on Christmas night. Buried in a small cemetery in Mims, alongside his wife. Often called the first martyr of the modern civil rights movement, Moore's gravesite is one of the most historically important locations in the entire state.